Hi guys, welcome to Mendoza Makes. I'm Michelle Mendoza and today we're making hash browns. I love making big breakfasts on the weekend. It's one of my favorite things to do. Pancakes, waffles, biscuits, usually a lot of bread, but also hash browns. And I've tweaked a few things about how I make my hash browns here and there to get them to be like nice and crispy, and I wanted to share with you guys. So the first thing I'm gonna do is peel the potatoes. I simply cannot peel potatoes without thinking of my big fat Greek wedding. It's physically impossible. So I have red potatoes here. You can use russet potatoes. I usually use russet potatoes. I'm gonna use red potatoes this time. You can also use gold potatoes. The kind of potatoes is totally up to you. It's up to your preference. But what I'm gonna do is shred the potatoes with my KitchenAid attachment shredder. It makes it so easy. But you can also use like a box grater or just a cheese grater. Step one is to peel them because you don't want the tough skin in your hash browns. Okay, now that I have my potatoes peeled, the next step is to shred them. And when I shred them, I just set a bowl of water underneath so that they fall straight into the water. I let them soak in the water usually for about maybe 20 to 30 minutes because what the water will do is remove the excess starch that keeps the potatoes from getting crispy all the way. Okay, now I'm gonna let them sit for about 20 to 30 minutes. Once the potatoes are done resting in their little bath water, I'm going to just get them out with a slotted spoon and put them out onto a clean kitchen towel. You can use paper towels, but in the past when I've used paper towels, I use like half the roll. So it's been much easier to just use a kitchen towel and then throw it in the wash. So I'm just gonna strain the potatoes because now that we've gotten a lot of the starch out, I want to make them as dry as possible before they go in the pan with the oil. So we're gonna cook them in vegetable oil or canola oil, whichever you prefer. And the water and the oil don't mix well together and it'll keep it from getting crispy all the way. So now we want them to be as dry as we can get them. So what I'm gonna do is use another towel and squish them so that they dry out, and then you can even like wring them out over the sink in like through the towel if you want to get all the moisture out, just as much water out of the potatoes now as you possibly can is the goal. So first you can wring them out into a ball. So if you just kind of ball up the corners of your towel like this and then twist and just kind of like wring them out over the sink. You can squeeze the bottom if you want. See all that water coming out like that? Just getting the water out as much as you can. And this is why a towel works really good if you're gonna do it this way too. If you try to do this with paper towels, they'll just rip. I usually then spread them out into like a really thin layer, and then I'll use another towel and like pat more moisture out of it. So now we're ready to cook them. Usually I use a large shallow pan and I use a non-stick pan. I use this one because the lip of it is kind of curved a little, and we're going to be frying them on one side and then flipping them over and frying them on the other side. And when I make mine, I just flip them in the pan. I'm not great at it, but practice makes perfect, and so I'm just practicing And I usually do it over the sink so that if I do splatter potato everywhere, it just goes in the sink and it's not a big deal. So it's fine. But this pan in particular, because of the edge of it, makes it easier for me to kind of like get it up and flip it over. If you're afraid of flipping in the pan like that, you can use a smaller pan, or if you're making less potatoes, and then use a spatula to flip them over. Or if you want to make kind of like little bunches of potatoes for, you know, your whole family or something like that, when you put them in the pan, I usually just flatten mine out and make like the entire pan is one hash brown basically, and because I flip them that way. But if you're going to make smaller individual portions, you could just do like one chunk here, one chunk here, one chunk here, and then flip them with your spatula if you're afraid of flipping them in the pan. So that's an option. So what we're going to do now is get our pan heated up with some oil in it, and then I'm going to put the hash browns in. So I'm going to get the pan to a medium-high heat. And I use canola oil for my hash browns. You can use vegetable oil. I've also tried to use coconut oil in the past to make it a little bit more healthy. And that worked perfectly fine. So you can use coconut oil. It gives it a little bit of tropically coconut flavor too, so that's an option. Putting my oil into one of these squirt bottles, by the way, is one of the greatest things I have ever done for myself. I keep it next to the stove right here, and it has been so useful. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Okay, I think my pan and my oil are hot now, so I'm going to put some hash browns in there. And you can tell if it's hot enough if they sizzle, so let's see. Yeah, okay, that's good. Now one of my mistakes was always overcrowding the pan, and it would keep the hash browns from getting crispy all the way. So I've figured out that the name of the game when you put them in the pan and cook them is to make them as thin as possible. Like in as thin of a layer as you can get them. So I use the back of my spatula and I just kind of like push them so that they spread out across the whole pan and make them as thin as I possibly can get them. That'll help them crisp up all the way. And then the other thing that gets them crispy is not touching them. So I leave them to cook here for 5 to 7 minutes, so quite a while. And what I look for to tell me when they're ready to be flipped is the little, like the edges and kind of in the middle where you can see in these little holes. I look to see if it's browned and looks like it's crispy on the bottom. You can kind of get your spatula under there and lift it up and look if you want to, but that's the visual indicator. So I usually wait 5 to 7 minutes and then I'll flip them over. Hopefully you guys can see this too, but I can see now that there's like some brown on the edges, and I can see the color change down in the middle of this, like through the potatoes. So now I'm going to flip them over. Okay, so here's the hard part. If you're going to flip them in the pan, I kind of like jiggle them a little bit to make sure that they're loose first. And you'll see that they move around in one piece, which is really good because that means it's going to stay together in one piece, hopefully, when you flip it over. So what I've learned doing this is that you just gotta commit. You gotta commit. You gotta just do it all the way. Because if you're scared and you like half do it and you go at the end, it's gonna go in the sink. So I do it over the sink just in case, because like I said, I'm not a professional. Okay, here we go. Little pieces got in the sink, whatever, it's fine, but look at that. Yeah, looking good. So now when I put them back on the stove, I've kind of like re-flattened them out if they've been, because they kind of just got jostled from me flipping them over. So I just kind of re-flatten them and leave them there. I forgot to do it on the other side, but I will do it on this side. And you can always add more salt when you're eating it too, so it's not a huge deal if you forget to do that. The thing that I've wanted to try to do that I haven't done yet is like super thinly slice some onion and like maybe some bell pepper, like red and green bell pepper, and mix it in with the potatoes and then fry it with the potatoes. I think that would be really good. I've also fried them before in bacon grease. Like I'll make the bacon for breakfast and then I'll fry the potato in the bacon fat. That adds some like bacon flavor. What I do usually do, and what I'm going to do today, is make fried eggs to go on top of the hash browns, because with the runny yolk of the fried egg, you cut into it and it kind of like spills all over the hash browns and makes like this gooey, eggy, buttery like sauce. My mouth is watering thinking about it. I'm literally making it and I'm talking about it and I'm like, oh my god, I want that. So yeah, it's really good. If you're going to be making a few batches of hash browns, like the potatoes I cut up here probably make like 2.5 batches. The other thing that I usually do is I stick either a sheet pan, like a cookie tray, or plates. I have stoneware plates that are oven safe. So I put those in the oven and I just turn the oven on like a warm temperature. Mine I use 170 and that seems to work really well. I know there's like newer ovens that have a warm setting, so if you have one of those, use that. But when this batch is done, I'll stick it on a plate in the oven, keeping it warm while I do the rest so that it doesn't get cold by the time you get to the table and eat it. I also do the same thing all the time for like pancakes and waffles. Anything that kind of takes a while and you have to do in multiple batches and you want it to be warm by the time it gets to the table. So what I'm going to do now is take this batch that's now done off and put it on a plate, and then I'm going to do the next batch. Same thing. Once you flip them over, the visual indicator kind of is the same, but it's harder to tell because the top layer is already crispy. So if you're looking through to like the second layer, sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. But usually I'll do like 4 to 5 minutes on the other side once I flip them, and that seems to work really well. As long as you have it at the right temperature. Make sure you're keeping it at like medium high this whole time. If you go too high, you're gonna burn it, and if you go too low, it'll take forever and it'll slow down the cooking. I mean, it'll get there, but it'll just take a really long time. So I'm gonna take these out now and put them on a plate and put them in the oven to keep warm while I do the rest. The steps for doing the rest are pretty much the same. Just rinse and repeat. I add a little bit more oil to the pan because usually the potatoes in the batch before them have soaked it all up. And then same deal, you just want to put your potatoes in the pan and put them in a layer as thin as you can get them so that they get nice and crispy. Crispy potatoes. And then I forgot to add salt to the first one, but I'll remember this time, so I'll add some salt. And then I'm just gonna let them cook until I see that they're crispy on the outside and then these holes in the middle, about 5 to 7 minutes. Just kind of rinse and repeat. Oh no! I flipped hash browns onto Bulbasaur! No! Bulbasaur! So this batch is nearly there, and I think that you can see the browning on the bottom. See around the edge right there and in the middle right there. You can see that better. So that's how I know that it's okay that it's time to flip these. Now the second batch is done. So I'm just gonna put them on a plate. Throw them in the oven. Keep warm, and we're gonna do the third batch. Last batch is in the pan. With the last batch in the pan, I'm also gonna start on the fried eggs. So I'll show you guys how to make fried eggs. So for fried eggs, the way that I usually do them is I get my pan warmed up, like medium-high heat, and I use butter as my like fat that's gonna go in the pan. Fried eggs are fried in oil or butter. I use butter for mine just because I like the flavor that it gives, but you can use oil. A lot of people also use oil so that you can spoon the oil on top of the eggs once they're in the pan, and that helps the whites cook faster. I get the idea behind that, but I haven't ever really had an issue with that. And usually if I'm cooking mine and the the whites aren't cooking all the way or as fast as the rest of them are, and they're kind of like getting too burnt on the bottom and the whites aren't cooked yet, usually what I'll do is just put a lid on top of the pan for a couple seconds, and usually like a minute or less. And usually that's plenty of time for the whites to finish cooking and like kind of steam in that heat without burning the bottom. So I can do 4 eggs in this pan comfortably. I have done 5 before and they just don't cook the same. So 4 in this size pan. This is like 8 inches, I think. So 4 in this size pan seems to be exactly perfect. So all you're gonna do is crack them into the pan, or if you're nervous about cracking them and getting shell in there, you can crack them separately and then just plop them in with like a spoon or from a bowl. But I'm just gonna let them cook exactly how they are in the pan for a little while. And what I'm waiting for is the white, like this clear part that's around, is to actually turn like a bright white color. But the yolks are still gonna be yellow and like plump and runny. And that's what I want, because I want to be able to cut the yolk on top of the delicious hash browns and use it as basically a sauce. And I started the eggs when I'm cooking the last batch of hash browns because the eggs don't take that long. I wait until I'm doing the last batch of hash browns to start the eggs. That way everything's done kind of at the same time. And I'm also going to get the coffee going in the mocha pot because you can't have breakfast on the weekend without coffee. That's just ridiculous. So see, the whites of the eggs are already, like, it's already starting to turn white and cook up. And that's all I'm looking for. Like, once the whites are white and pretty like solid looking, they're done. Because I want to make sure that the yolks stay runny so that I can use them as a sauce, kind of like I said before. So these are almost done already. Super fast. And my last batch of hash browns is pretty much done as well. So I'm going to get all this off of here and put it onto a plate and then get ready to eat. You can see this one. I cooked one more egg after I took those other 4 out. And you can see that like it's kind of getting burny on the bottom. It's too brown. The butter's browning. The heat's too high is what's happening right here. But the whites aren't cooking. So what I'm gonna do is turn off the heat completely. And then I'm gonna put a lid on the top just for a couple seconds so that the whites will finish cooking and it'll kind of save the egg. So I'm gonna take it off the heat and just let the residual heat and like steam kind of cook the rest of the white. So that's kind of how you can save your fried eggs from getting burnt on the bottom and not cooked all the way on the top if you accidentally let the heat get too high. It happens to me every once in a while. I just put a lid on it and then it cooks the rest of the way and that's fine. So I'm gonna just finish this off with some freshly ground pepper because I love pepper on my eggs. It's so good. Time to try. Nice and salty too. I like using the ketchup and the hot sauce, or sometimes I'll have like a glass of orange juice with this breakfast because it's so salty and savory flavors that it needs like some acidity to kind of brighten it up a little bit. So it's really, really good. I'm gonna go eat the rest now. So if you like this video or you learned something, give it a like. If you would like to learn more, subscribe to my channel. I upload every Friday. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!